In the towering halls of the Galactic Council, an ancient, sprawling assembly of alien leaders gathered from across the cosmos, the agenda moved forward with ritual efficiency. Alien diplomats, politicians, and military commanders convened as they always did, deliberating over trade laws, territorial disputes, and the annual tribute collections from member planets. The tribute, an offering each planet gave to signify loyalty and respect, was a long-standing tradition, a practice meant to maintain order and reinforce the Council's authority. It was less about resources and more about control. Compliance was expected, defiance was not tolerated. Among the reports on this year's tributes, one planet, relatively new to the Council's grasp, stood out. Earth. Recently inducted and seen by many Council members as nothing more than a minor, backward world with limited resources, Earth had been a topic of quiet amusement and some skepticism. Several officials had questioned if Earth's inclusion was even worth the administrative bother, but the Council's rules applied to all, big or small, powerful or insignificant. Tribute was a matter of protocol, a reminder to each world that the Council's authority was supreme. The high-ranking officials barely glanced at the message requesting Earth's tribute. They expected minerals, rare resources, or cultural artifacts, something that would symbolize Earth's submission to the Council. Instead, Earth's leaders sent back a message containing only 4 words, asterisk. We do not kneel. Asterisk. The chamber fell silent, a murmur rippling through the assembly as Council members processed the words. We do not kneel. The phrase was defiant, pointed, and utterly disrespectful by the Council's standards. Some members chuckled, dismissing it as bravado from a world that didn't understand the consequences of defiance. One senior delegate, a being with 1,000 years of Council service and known for his stern approach, raised a segmented limb, calling for order. They think this is a game, he declared, voice booming across the hall. Send them a reminder, a final warning. Inform them that failure to comply with the tribute demand will result in repercussions beyond their comprehension. The threat was clear, but few doubted Earth would see reason. After all, no planet had ever dared stand against the Council's authority, and it was unlikely that a small, resource-poor world like Earth would be the first. With the message approved, the Council turned its attention back to other matters, confident that Earth would soon fall in line, as so many others had before. As Earth received the final warning, there was no hesitation in their response. Earth's leaders understood what was at stake, but their decision had been made. The Council's message was met not with fear but with calculated resolve. Months passed, and the Galactic Council's central space station buzzed with excitement and anticipation. Word had spread that Earth's tribute shipment had finally arrived, and curiosity tinged with contempt filled the Council chambers. They'd heard of Earth's initial defiance, a mere footnote for most, but many were still eager to see what the humans had ultimately decided to send. Despite their previous resistance, it was expected that Earth had come to its senses, submitting something modest but acceptable, as all worlds eventually did. Council members, diplomats, and dignitaries gathered to observe, some chuckling and making quiet remarks about Earth's likely naivety and lack of understanding of true galactic protocol. The Earth transport ship, a sleek yet surprisingly utilitarian vessel, hovered in the Council's docking bay. It bore no symbols, no flags, and its hull was simple, as if it intended to convey nothing but efficiency and purpose. With a final hiss, the ship's loading bay opened, revealing rows of large, unmarked containers. Council workers moved quickly, ready to open the shipment and unveil Earth's tribute. Some expected rare minerals, while others joked about peculiar Earth artifacts, something that would seem exotic or amusing in an alien collection. Council members jostled for a better view, eager to see what Earth had offered up. One of the workers cracked open the first container, and immediately, the room fell silent. Inside, neatly arranged, were the severed heads of alien soldiers. Council members leaned forward in confusion, then pulled back in shock as the scene became clear. These were not ordinary heads. They were the heads of Council enforcers, infamous operatives known for their ruthless actions, now staring lifelessly at the Council members who had once commanded them. Each head bore a metallic tag with the details of the atrocities they had committed on Earth. The crimes ranged from brutal raids to kidnappings, acts that Earth had not forgotten and clearly would not forgive. A low murmur of horror and disbelief rippled through the crowd. The air felt thick with tension as council members processed the silent message Earth had sent. This was not a tribute. This was a statement. Attached to each head was a message, meticulously written, each word resonating with the clarity of a warning. Asterisk. These are our terms for peace. We do not send riches. We do not offer trinkets. We send back only what you have sent to us. Asterisk. One by one, the council members grew tense, realizing the calculated nature of the display. These weren't random casualties but a strategic choice. Earth had captured and executed some of the most notorious and feared agents of the council, turning what had once been threats into trophies of resistance. The council members stood stunned, understanding that Earth had used the council's very methods of intimidation against them. They'd taken the council's enforcers, the faces of their oppression, and turned them into a chilling display of defiance. As the shock subsided, anger began to fill the council chamber. Shouts erupted, some calling for immediate retribution, others stunned into silence. The council's highest-ranking members struggled to regain order, but Earth's defiance was unlike anything they'd ever encountered. Their authority, taken for granted for so long, was now openly challenged in a way that unsettled even the most confident among them. The message was unmistakable. Earth would not be bullied, and they were prepared to retaliate in ways the council had never anticipated. In that moment, a chilling realization crept through the council ranks. They had underestimated humanity. The heads in the containers were not merely symbols of defiance. They were Earth's way of warning the galaxy that it would not bow down and would, instead, return every threat with a greater one of their own. For the first time, the Galactic Council, the undisputed authority of countless worlds, found themselves questioning if they had finally met a world that could fight back. The shock of Earth's response reverberated through the Galactic Council, leaving its members divided, furious, and for the first time, a little fearful. The defiance displayed by Earth felt almost impossible to comprehend. No planet in the Council's history had dared to send such a brutal reply to a tribute demand. Discussions quickly grew heated, with members shouting across the chamber, struggling to process what had just happened. Some alien delegates demanded immediate retribution, their pride stung by what they saw as an unforgivable insult. Others, the more cautious or tactically minded, hesitated. They could see the statement Earth had made, and recognized that such audacity might mean Earth was more prepared than they'd assumed. As the council argued, a senior commander stepped forward, his voice cutting through the clamor. Earth is a small, under-resourced world, he asserted. They are overconfident, and need to be reminded of the power they're up against. The council chamber quieted, and a sense of angered unity began to form. They had ruled the galaxy unchallenged for eons, imposing their will on countless worlds. Earth's defiance was not just a threat, it was an open affront to the Council's authority, something that simply couldn't go unpunished. An invasion order was hastily drafted, and fleets were mobilized to bring Earth back in line. They expected resistance but remained confident that Earth could not stand up to the might of the combined galactic forces. But as preparations for invasion continued, rumors began to spread, whispers in the corridors of power, carried by lower-ranking council members and their aides. These were stories of just who Earth had beheaded. Many of the severed heads belonged to the council's own notorious enforcers, agents who had once terrorized Earth and other planets with ruthless efficiency. These agents were well-trained, armed with advanced council technology, and yet Earth had somehow captured, executed, and returned them as trophies. Each one had been a powerful symbol of the Council's reach and strength, but Earth had reduced them to grim messages in boxes. Those whispers sparked unease. If Earth had managed to overpower such operatives, what else could they be capable of? A small faction within the Council began to question the wisdom of an all-out assault. They pointed out that Earth's strategy had already shown a level of cunning and preparation they hadn't expected. Earth's response wasn't random, a diplomat argued. It was calculated. This was psychological warfare, meant to send a message we can't ignore. But despite these cautions, pride and anger continued to steer the Council's actions. They could not allow Earth's insolence to go unanswered. Plans for a large-scale invasion moved forward, albeit with some contingency plans that now included additional reconnaissance, just in case Earth had hidden resources they hadn't anticipated. As the fleets neared Earth's sector, something else began to dawn on the Council's tactical teams. The reports coming in revealed that Earth's military wasn't merely primitive. They had developed unconventional tactics specifically designed to exploit the weaknesses of the Council's technology. Earth's forces had adapted, innovating ways to counter the Council's weaponry and communication systems, and they had already set traps along the outer edges of their territory. Several Council scouts encountered unexpected resistance, suffering surprising losses as they were ambushed and outmaneuvered by human forces who moved with agility and speed, disappearing as quickly as they struck. This unexpected resilience began to chip away at the Council's confidence. Earth's tactics were disruptive, unorthodox, and highly effective against the Council's large but unwieldy forces. Alien commanders reported being unable to predict Earth's movements or counter their strategies, which seemed tailored specifically to disarm and disorient the Council's usual methods. Frustration mounted as Earth continued to hold its ground, forcing the Council to question their initial assumptions. Earth wasn't just defending, they were resisting with a precision that made it clear they had prepared for this fight. In their arrogance, the Council had believed Earth would be an easy conquest, a planet that would quickly submit when faced with overwhelming force. Now, however, they were beginning to realize that Earth had more than defiance on its side. They had ingenuity, resourcefulness, and most importantly, a fierce commitment to their independence. The Council leaders were left grappling with a question that had never before troubled them. What would they do if this time they truly couldn't force a world into submission? As the Council's fleets moved closer to Earth, the first strike came not from the Council but from humanity. In a bold, preemptive move, Earth's forces launched a coordinated series of attacks on the Council's relay stations and supply ships. These attacks were surgical, precise, and devastating. In a matter of hours, communication lines were disrupted, logistics chains were thrown into chaos, and the Council's forward operating bases struggled to regroup. Earth's tactics were unlike anything the Council had encountered. They were rapid, guerrilla-style assaults designed to destabilize rather than overwhelm. Each strike left Council commanders scrambling for a strategy, but every countermeasure was met with another unpredictable maneuver from Earth. Earth's forces didn't engage in direct battles. Instead, they relied on speed and deception, striking quickly and vanishing before the Council could organize a response. Ambushes became commonplace, with human ships appearing out of nowhere, hitting Council positions with pinpoint accuracy, and retreating into the vastness of space. The Council's fleets, designed for large-scale, direct confrontations, found themselves outmaneuvered by a planet they had dismissed as primitive. Human commanders knew the Council's strengths and adapted their strategies to exploit the Council's weaknesses, using everything from decoy transmissions to electromagnetic interference to throw the invaders into disarray. The Council's forces, accustomed to facing planets that either surrendered or offered minimal resistance, were caught entirely off guard. Reports of mounting losses and failed missions filtered back to the Council's central command, each one chipping away at the confidence that had once seemed unshakable. Alien captains found themselves hesitant, second-guessing their orders, fearful that every movement might be anticipated by the human forces lurking unseen. The psychological toll was evident. Soldiers who had once marched into battle without fear now approached each mission with a growing sense of dread, uncertain if they were walking into yet another trap. Earth's psychological warfare extended beyond the battlefield. In intercepted transmissions, they released recordings of Council prisoners they had captured, detailing the cruelty inflicted by the Council's enforcers and painting humanity as liberators rather than rebels. These messages spread, demoralizing the Council's soldiers further, eroding the belief in their mission. Earth was no longer just a target, it had become a symbol of resistance, and its tactics resonated with a growing number of dissenters across the Council's lower ranks. Council leaders, desperate to regain control of the situation, began to make rash decisions. Fleet movements became more erratic, orders were contradictory, and discipline faltered under the pressure. Alien commanders who once saw themselves as conquerors now found themselves on the defensive, struggling against an enemy they couldn't see coming. The Council's vast fleets, which had once struck fear into planets across the galaxy, were now slowly unraveling as Earth's forces continued their relentless assault. Human ingenuity, adaptability, and resolve had turned the Council's strength into a liability, with every engagement forcing the Council to question if they were on the wrong side of history. The final blow to the Council's morale came when a human strike team infiltrated one of the Council's command ships, planting a message in their system that appeared on every screen within the fleet. It read simply, "We are not afraid." The Council had always relied on intimidation to keep its rule intact, but Earth had shattered that illusion. This statement, broadcast in plain language across the Council's ships, left no room for doubt. Earth was here to fight, and they had no intention of surrendering. By the end of this relentless assault, the Council's forces were exhausted, spread thin, and disorganized. What had started as a campaign to crush a defiant world had become a desperate attempt to save face against an adversary who seemed to know their every weakness. Council leaders, once dismissive of Earth, now found themselves contemplating a truce, recognizing that Earth was no longer a minor world in need of control but a formidable force that could not be subdued through brute force alone. The Council had always believed itself untouchable, but Earth had forced them to see the fragility of their power. The humans had proven, beyond any doubt, that they would protect their freedom with every resource and every ounce of ingenuity they possessed. After days of relentless conflict, the Galactic Council finally realized the futility of their campaign against Earth. The sheer tenacity and brilliance of humanity had shattered their belief in the inevitable victory of their superior forces. What had started as a simple show of power, an expectation that Earth would submit under the pressure of overwhelming force, had turned into a prolonged, humiliating struggle. The Council, accustomed to quick conquests and minimal resistance, now faced the grim reality that Earth's resolve could not be broken by force alone. In the aftermath of Earth's continued resistance, the Council found itself on the brink of an unprecedented decision. The invasion had stalled. Key fleet commanders had been replaced due to failures on the battlefield, and entire units had been lost in skirmishes where the humans seemed to anticipate their every move. The Council's communications were disrupted, their fleets scattered, and morale was at an all-time low. Earth's tactics, unpredictable, innovative, and relentlessly adaptive, had overwhelmed the Council's conventional strategies, and it became clear that continuing the fight would come at an unbearable cost. Faced with mounting losses and a growing number of dissenters within their ranks, the Council sent an envoy to Earth. They hoped that diplomacy could still salvage their fractured reputation and perhaps preserve some semblance of control. The envoy was tasked with opening peace talks. Though the reality was far from a true peace, it was more about survival. Earth's leaders, on the other hand, had no illusions. They had made their position clear from the outset, and now, their terms would be non-negotiable. The delegation arrived in orbit around Earth, but this time, there were no fanfares, no grand displays of power. The Council was not here to demonstrate dominance but to ask for a truce. The message was delivered with a sense of reluctant humility, far removed from the arrogance that had defined the Council's previous actions. Earth, for its part, didn't rush to respond. They understood the gravity of the moment, and knew that their position was stronger than ever. This was their moment to set the terms, and they did so without hesitation. The terms for peace were simple but unwavering. Earth would remain sovereign, free from any further tribute demands or interference from the Council. The Council's forces would withdraw from Earth's sector, and any future dealings between Earth and the Galactic Council would be based on mutual respect. There would be no more demands, no more threats. The Council would have to acknowledge Earth as an equal, not a subjugated world. In exchange, Earth agreed to allow some trade, though only on terms that were advantageous to humanity. Earth would not be part of the tribute system anymore. Instead, they would engage in diplomacy, but only with those who respected their autonomy. The Council, recognizing that they had no other option, agreed to the terms reluctantly. It was a bitter pill to swallow for the leaders who had once believed Earth was nothing more than an insignificant, powerless world. But now, they had no choice but to acknowledge Earth's strength and resilience. As the peace talks concluded, Earth's victory became undeniable. Not only had they repelled a powerful force, but they had also forced the most powerful alliance in the galaxy to recognize their sovereignty. The human leaders made one final statement to the Council as the truce was signed. "If you ever come for us again, we will be ready. We will send more than just heads next time." With that, the Galactic Council's forces began their retreat. The truce had been signed, and Earth's independence was secured. But the lasting impact of this victory would be felt far beyond the borders of Earth. Throughout the galaxy, the Council's reputation had been irreparably damaged. The message was clear: humanity, though small, was not to be underestimated. Earth had proven that they would fight for their freedom with everything they had, and the galaxy would never forget it. The finality of the truce marked the end of the Council's attempts to subjugate Earth. The Council had been forced to recognize humanity's unique resilience, and in doing so, they had learned that underestimating Earth was a mistake they would not make again. The galaxy had just learned a very important lesson: never mess with Earth.